I'll just let you introduce yourself and we'll take it away here. All right. I'll give you a short intro. Again, I will go back and pre-record everything in the beginning. All right, you guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm here with Kendra Perry, and today we are talking about something that is truly going to save you money, save you time, and make sure you don't have a mental breakdown, as Kendra and I talked about and chatted about behind the scenes. So we started recording. You know, we know many of you are launching online programs. You're scaling your business. You experts, you leaders out there, you small businesses, shoot, you big businesses out there are looking at creating amazing online programs to scale your business faster. But all things we create don't actually win the way that we want them to. And sometimes we as business owners, I'm raising my hand here if you're watching the video version of this, have launched things in the past. Kendra's raising her hand too, where we think it's awesome. We launch the whole thing and then it's totally bunk because we didn't beta test it. So today on the show, Kendra is here to talk to you all about how to beta test your online program so that you don't fall on your face and lose your ass. Kendra, thank you so much for being on the show. Give everybody an introduction to you, who you are, and why you're so passionate about this topic.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I've been listening to your podcast for a little while, so it feels kind of like I'm fangirling a little bit on this side. So thank you. I'm Kendra Perry, and I help health coaches start their business. Health coaches tend to be very clueless about the business side of things. They just want to help people, and then they're like, oh crap, I got to run a business and I don't even know what I'm doing. So that's sort of where I come in. Now, why I am so passionate about beta programs is because, well, I did that whole thing that April just described. You know, I spent 6 to 8 months creating this program that I thought was amazing. I put a lot of time into it. I put a lot of money into it. I worked on the weekends. I sacrificed my relationship with my partner. Like, he probably wanted to dump me during that time. And then I put it out there and I pumped all this money into the launch and ads and like this webinar, and like I didn't get one sale. And it never even occurred to me, like as I'm running this webinar, I'm sitting around Post-its, like probably 30 Post-its that say $15,000 on them, because I was like, I'm going to make $15,000. This is what's happening. If I surround myself with these Post-its, it'll happen, because I'm manifesting it, and it didn't happen at all. And I was like, it never even occurred to me that that would happen. And I was like so perplexed, and it really it traumatized me. And then I relaunched this thing 3 more times over the next couple months. And I think I ended up making a couple sales. So I lost a ton of money, like thousands of dollars, and my sanity, complete mental breakdown.
Right.
And it's because what I knew my people needed and what they wanted were not aligned. It was not the same thing. Had I beta tested, I actually would have learned that like a year earlier. So that's why I'm so passionate about this.
Okay, let's just stop there and let's just repeat what you just said. What your people needed versus what they wanted were not exactly the same thing. We could just end the podcast right there with that. I think that is a huge disconnect for business leaders, especially, you know, you guys are listening to this show, you're experts in your space. You know what they actually need, because you're the expert, right? You know what they really, really need. But it doesn't mean that that's actually what they want, for a whole bunch of different reasons, which we're going to talk about, I'm sure, on today's show. So what exactly is, like, how do you define a beta test, Kendra?
Sure. So you can kind of think of a beta test as like a trial run of your program. And you can do this for a private coaching program. You can do it for a group coaching program. You can do it for a membership program. Basically, any new program, it's the first time you run it, and you run it strategically so that you can get feedback from the real life people, so you can figure out where the gaps are and where people are confused. And then you can get the information ahead of time. Is this actually going to sell? It's basically a way to pre-validate and prove to yourself, oh, this is going to sell, or it has sold, therefore I should make it, instead of making the whole thing and then throwing it out there and realizing that nobody wants it.
Right. And so I have a question that I want to ask, but I'm going to actually hold this question for a little bit, because I think that you might get to it. How often do you find, because you coach health coaches, how often do you find that coaches actually do this?
Never.
Okay. So if you're listening and you haven't done this, you're not alone. Doesn't mean you shouldn't, though.
Well, I don't think a lot of people necessarily know about it. I think it logically it makes sense. Well, I create the thing and then I sell it. But when you're beta testing, you're bringing in this whole concept of pre-selling. So you're selling something before it's made. And that seems really counterintuitive and also incredibly intimidating because you're like, well, if I sell it, I don't have it. So how does that even make sense, right? But it actually does make sense. But people just don't, it just doesn't logically kind of connect in their head.
Right. And so really what I'm hearing you say is the benefits of beta testing is really making sure that it is desirable. People do want it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think I first heard this concept. You're right. It scared the shit out of me when I first heard this. I was, oh gosh, this is like feeling like it's dating me. I was on Lewis Howe's book launch for School of Greatness, like 2013 or something. And a really small group of people, there was like only 40 or 50 of us in this beta launch. And listening to some of these online course creators then, and these guys were selling their programs that were on this beta team for before they'd ever built them. And I remember thinking to myself, because I'm such a strategist, like freaking out about that, thinking there's no way I could sell something that I haven't built yet, and just absolutely panicking about that. Flash forward though, like I was sharing in the beginning, I have launched stuff since then that has been totally bunk because I never tested it that way. Yeah. So you're right. I mean, that initially when you guys hear this, it's going to be like, oh my gosh, this is so scary. But what happens is like, exactly like you said, you're totally validating what it is that you have and that it is needed in the market. So what steps do you need to take before you run your beta test? Talk to us about that.
Okay. So the first thing that you need in place, and I'm sure you've talked about this with your audience, and I'm a broken record about this. I am constantly punching this into people's head, but you need to know the who, the problem, and the solution, right? Which is essentially the niche. You need to know your niche. You can't just sell like a general basic program. Like it needs to be specifically for someone, and it needs to solve a specific problem and give a specific outcome. So who is the program for? What does it solve for them? And what outcome does it help them achieve? And that needs to be incredibly clear. And if you don't know what that is, then that's where you need to start. Like, don't even consider launching a program. I see this a lot in the health coaching world. They launch like, oh, this is my detox program and it'll help you solve fatigue, brain fog, joint pain, leaky gut. You know, you're going to lose weight too. And like, yeah, okay, we know in health and wellness that these basic strategies can help with a lot of things, but people don't know this. They're just like, well, I'm fucking tired. Mm-hmm. But you're promising too many things. So now it seems inauthentic.
Yeah. And I think, let me ask you this too. You know, we talk to a lot of business owners that are launching membership sites, right? So the purpose, the business strategy, the business model of a membership site is to keep people in your membership site. And so you're always, so in your mind as a membership program creator, you are always thinking, I need to come up with more content to keep them in there, keep them engaged. Yes, all that is true, but there still has to be an end result. It could be an end result of each month. It could be an end result of each week. But like these, and this is like my broken record, like you have to have predictable transformational results within any single program, whether it's in a day, in an hour, in a week, and these like benchmarks that people can measure to go through. And I totally see that too. You're so right about how like people don't know how to explain like when you do this well, or when you're done with this, or at the end of this, you're going to have these, you know, things. Yeah. So obviously step number one is knowing the end result you provide, even if it's an ongoing end result. For those of you guys that are launching membership sites, you are not exempt from this. You have to know that. Sorry.
Yeah, because there's that maintenance piece too. And if I'm speaking to health and wellness, if we use fatigue, it's like the membership helps them get more energy, but they stay in the membership to keep their energy high, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. There are still measurable results. Okay. Yes. That was I just was dealing with that with some clients this week who have a really successful membership site that's falling off. They've had literally thousands of people in it.
Oh my gosh.
It's falling off because of that fact that they haven't really measured the end result in that
Right.
Totally aside from this, but just for you guys membership people. So step number 1 is obviously knowing the who, the problem you're solving, and the solutions you deliver.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
Great.
Yeah. And then next what you want to do, once that's done, you kind of can create the program structure, but you're literally just creating like an outline for the program. Like, what's the timeline? Is this going to be a 4-week, a 90-day, a 6-month? Like, what is the timeline of the program? How are you going to set up the calls? In the case of a private coaching program, how often are you going to meet? What types of sessions are you going to have? If it's a group program, when are the training calls? When are the Q&A calls? Membership, as an example, like, what are they getting monthly in terms of call, in terms of content, whatever that is? You can set up the structure, and you can make a basic outline for what you're going to cover in each sort of training call or education session. But that's as far as you go, because you really, like, I teach people to launch with an idea or an outline. So like, this is the program, this is generally what it's going to look like, but I'm not going to spend the next 3 to 6 months like video recording all of the content, because you're going to actually run the program live. Again, whether that's private membership or a group program with a fixed date, it's live, right? You're running it live, and that's how you can launch with an outline, because you're not pre-recording anything, right?
Yeah. Super. Absolutely. Anything else we should have done before somebody runs this beta?
Honestly, that's it, because I think with a beta, in order to test something, 5 to 10 people will do it for a first round. And you don't need a fancy launch strategy to get 5 to 10 people. A lot of my clients are literally just doing direct outreach. They're like writing a list of people who they think would be interested in the program, and they're reaching out. They're saying, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. Would you be interested? And I think that's totally fine. Sure, if you have launch skills and you know how to launch, you can launch a beta with a fancy launch style. That's what I just did. I literally just launched a beta that finished enrollment on Friday. And it had the whole fancy webinar sales sequence thing. But as someone who's newer, like, you don't need any of that. Like, you literally just need a payment link and then some direct outreach to get someone. So kind of depends on where you are in your business. But if you don't have anything, you don't need much.
Yeah. And I love that you just said that, because that's so true. And I think, the whole launch strategy and process really, really holds people up, especially when they're newly developing their program and they're newly learning how to, the whole launch strategy. It's just a lot at once. Okay. So now I'm going to go back and ask this question that I was thinking about asking you earlier. Do you recommend, so business model, so you were talking about, we have to know, you call it a structure of your program. I call it the business model of the program. In a beta, do you recommend that your people run it on a condensed business model or a condensed structure, or actually, do you feel like it needs to be the exact structure they're proposing if the structure actually aligns with the results they get? What do you think about that?
So I think it could go either way. Now, with my people, I recommend that they do it on the timeline, just because health is really hard to speed up. For people to get results, like, they need time to implement. You could run it on like a quicker or condensed timeline. I think with B2B, something where you're teaching like business strategies or something like that, I think you could definitely do that. I think either way, but it probably depends on your industry.
Yeah, great tips. Okay, so how do we actually run a beta program for free? How do we go through that process? What is the value in that? And really the question I can ask you, because we see this all the time, is how to keep people engaged when you're giving them something away for free. There's always some sort of skin in the game thing, especially with beta launch.
I actually don't think I would ever recommend doing a beta for free, or like offering it for free.
Okay.
I don't think people have much of a stake in things they get for free.
Right.
And I know a lot of the language around running a beta is to offer it for free, but I just don't think you get committed people. And the point of the beta is to test and get people to go through it. And I honestly think, and I don't know who said this, that the transformation is in the transaction. I don't know who to give credit to, but I've heard that before, and I truly believe it. People have to give away something that hurts just a little bit in order to be engaged and committed. And most people I know who've run free betas, like, a lot of people drop off. So I think people should charge for it, but I think they should probably charge maybe around half of what they ultimately want to charge for the non-beta, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Yeah, we just
Yeah.
did a beta of our masterclass, your signature offer, and it was half the cost, which is still hundreds and hundreds of dollars. But yeah, I mean, I think that you still need, yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so I was going through kind of our notes and I was like, I wonder what she's going to say about this free beta thing. So glad you said that. All right, and what are the 3 steps you have to running a transformation in your beta program, a transformative beta program?
Right. So yeah, I think there's 3 components in any sort of transformative program that really what they make up is the experience of the program. And I really do believe the experience is what generally sells in a program rather than just some like DIY info product that
100%.
There's 0 experience. So
Right.
The first one is education, right? You have to be teaching people something new, something they didn't know before. I find in a lot of programs though, people stop at the education piece and they're just spewing out content and information, and content and information doesn't equal transformation because we actually have an abundance of content. Like content is not our problem in this world. It is literally everywhere and there's too much of it, right? But you do need that education piece. So the next piece is the support. Like how are you actually going to support people? And that might be through live coaching calls, live Q&A calls. It might be through email support, text support if you're doing more of a private coaching program or some sort of one-on-one program. But you do need to support people. And that's really why people invest. Because like the education is great, especially when you deliver it in a step-by-step format, but like they can find all that stuff if they want to, right? So that support piece is really important for that experience. And then the third is accountability. I think accountability often, again, is missed. But how are you actually going to hold people accountable? Because people actually need that, especially if you're talking about health and wellness or even business, right? Especially new business owners, right? Like, how are you actually going to like call them out on their shit and be like, hey, did you actually do this? And that can be through email check-ins or homework assignments where people actually have to hand it in, right? In my programs, because I like to run more intimate group programs, if people go MIA, I actually follow up with them. And I'm like, hey, I've noticed that you haven't been engaging. I just want to know, like, is there some way you're not being supported? Like, how can we help you? And obviously in the end, it's their responsibility. And if they go MIA, that's their thing. But I think that accountability piece and being able to keep tabs on people in some way is really important in a program.
Yeah, I love that you said all that. So education, support, and accountability for sure. 3 ways to build this transformative program. Love all of that. I agree with it 100%. And love that you run smaller groups. I love smaller group programs. I think that we're really starting to see a shift, thank heavens, from the cattle drive courses and programs that have been certainly popular from, about 2017 to 2019. And it's all about relationships. So if you guys are listening, you're about to launch a master course. Great. That's awesome. We're super happy for you. But there is massive value in the accountability piece and the relationship piece between smaller elite programs with people. Love that. And then how do you recommend people actually use this beta testing process to lead in their space, to lead their industry in their program? What are this is kind of the wrap up question here, but what are the springboard steps after this beta that you recommend people take in order to take the lead in their space, especially for you? Like you deal with health coaches, they're all health coaches, but everybody's different. Everybody brings something different to the table in their program design. So what are really kind of these springboard steps to lead in whatever area they want to lead in?
So it's being very intentional with the feedback that you receive in the beta, right? That's what's going to allow you to make the program better and optimize it and make it the best in your space, in your industry. And so you want a really robust way to collect feedback within the program, right? You can like kind of gauge what people are thinking, in the Facebook group, if that's what you're doing or however you're doing it, but actually creating surveys that you give away after every phase of the program, right? And I love bribing people. So I usually say, hey, if you fill out all 6 surveys, I'm going to enter you into the contest. And I make the prize like really juicy, like just like, oh my God, right? Because people need a little bit of incentive. So I like to call it ethical bribery, but there are actually 4 questions that I want to share with you that you can ask your people after each module or phase or step, whatever you want to call it. And that is, what was your favorite part about this training or module? What was confusing about this training or module? what do you wish I had expanded on? And finally, what resource would help you better succeed? And that's what helps you. So when you run the beta, like you want to run it super basic, like it's the most basic way you can run it while still providing the value, right? So don't go and create a million handouts and like a million resources and all this stuff. Like actually ask them like, what would help you, right? So you're basically, and it's almost like a co-creation process. Like you're creating this program, not just with you, but with the people who are literally engaging in it. And that's how you make it the best, because at some point, after you do this a few times, people are like, wow, I feel like you made that program exactly for me. And you did, because you created it with them, right?
Right. What an awesome idea. I love those feedback questions, and just being able to measure where people are in each benchmark of the program too. And how cool is this? Like, you can't do this if you've already taken the time, recorded the videos, done all the PDFs, and they're all pretty and they have your logo and they're all branded on there. And then you go, like, you don't get an opportunity to do that because you've already created the outcome for that. So this is a very cool concept to actually take it from that direction and have the beta students go through and tell you, hey, this is what I need right now in order to take action on what I learned today or this week. So super awesome. Kendra, thank you so much for being on the podcast. This was super informative. How can people find you and connect with you? You have your own podcast. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, I have a podcast called the Wealthy Coach Podcast. So for anyone who's doing online coaching, I speak primarily to health coaches, but anyone who's in the kind of online personal development, health and fitness space, I give a lot of great information on that podcast. But if you want to connect with me or ask me any questions about the show, the best place to connect with me is Instagram. My handle is at Kendra Perry Inc. I answer all my DMs and I love chatting with people. So don't be shy.
I love it. I love it. And we really appreciate you being on the show. And following this, so for our listeners to take action, we were talking about a way for them to go through and take action based on what you talk about. So we'll have a resource to be able to share with our listeners that they can take action in the show notes of this show, where they can do that too. Dropping my pen here. We'll make sure that they find that. So all of the show notes, you guys can be found at SweetLifeCo.com. Click on our podcast, and where to connect with Kendra, how to find her podcast, and everything we talked about today will be in those show notes for you. Thank you so much, Kendra. We appreciate your time, and I love the concept of the beta launch. Both you and I have learned some hard lessons, and hopefully those people who haven't done this process yet will save them some time, money, and I'm certainly increasing their peace of mind.
Thank you, April.
You're welcome. Thanks.